The stars looked different from here, Maria Washington thought as she gazed out the observation deck of the New Horizon. 300 years ago, her ancestors could never have imagined that their great-granddaughter would be traveling between worlds, heading to a conference that would shape the future of human-alien relations. The ship hummed quietly around her, carrying 50 of Earth's finest diplomats, scientists, and legal experts toward what everyone hoped would be a historic gathering on Kepler 442b. Maria adjusted her formal robes, the deep blue fabric catching the light from distant suns. As one of Earth's federal supreme arbiters, she had presided over countless cases that helped establish humanity's legal framework for interspecies cooperation. Today she was heading to the most important meeting of her career. The Galactic Federation's annual legal summit would address new protocols for dispute resolution between member species, and Earth's voice would be heard for the first time as a full member. Captain Lisa Martinez's voice crackled over the ship's communication system. "Attention all passengers, we're experiencing some technical difficulties with our main engine systems. Nothing to worry about, but we'll need to make an emergency stop at Nexus Prime for repairs. We should be back on course within 12 hours. Maria frowned slightly. Nexus Prime was known as a neutral trading station, operated primarily by the Zephyrians. The blue-skinned, warrior-like species had been among the founding members of the Galactic Federation over 2 centuries ago. They were known for their strict adherence to hierarchy and their somewhat rigid social structure. Maria had studied their culture extensively as part of her preparation for interspecies legal work. The New Horizon shuddered as it changed course, and Maria could feel the ship's engines powering down to minimal levels. Through the observation windows, she could see the massive structure of Nexus Prime growing larger. The station was impressive, built like a giant wheel spinning slowly in space with docking arms extending from its central hub. Ships of various designs and sizes were already attached to different sections, representing dozens of different species from across the galaxy. Dr. Kevin Brooks joined Maria at the observation deck. The young scientist had been selected to present Earth's latest research on quantum communication networks. "Have you ever been to a Zephyrian facility before?" he asked, checking his tablet for the latest updates on their situation. "No, but I've studied their legal systems extensively," Maria replied. "They have a very formal approach to justice, though sometimes their adherence to tradition can make them inflexible when dealing with newer Federation members." Kevin nodded, looking slightly nervous. "I hope they're more welcoming than some of the stories I've heard. My cousin Jake served on a trade mission last year and said they can be pretty dismissive of humans." Before Maria could respond, the ship's docking clamps engaged with a loud metallic clang. Captain Martinez announced that Zephyrian security forces would be boarding to conduct a routine inspection while repairs were underway. This was standard procedure for any unscheduled stop at a Federation facility. Maria gathered her official documents and credentials from her quarters. As a federal supreme arbiter, she carried special identification that granted her diplomatic immunity and legal authority throughout Federation space. Her clearance level was among the highest in human space, equivalent to a Supreme Court justice on old Earth. She had worked hard to earn this position, overcoming countless barriers and prejudices throughout her career. The airlock hissed open, and 6 Zephyrian security officers entered the ship. They were tall, imposing figures with blue-gray skin and prominent ridges along their foreheads. Their uniforms were crisp and military in style, with various insignia denoting rank and specialization. The lead officer, who appeared to be a commander based on his decorations, scanned the assembled human crew with obvious disdain. "I am Commander Vextar of Nexus Prime Security," he announced in heavily accented English. "This vessel will be searched for contraband and weapons. All crew and passengers will submit to questioning and identification verification." Captain Martinez stepped forward with her credentials. "Commander, I'm Captain Lisa Martinez of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. We're traveling under full diplomatic protection to the legal summit on Kepler 442b. Our emergency stop here is purely mechanical." Vextar barely glanced at her documents before handing them to a subordinate. "Humans always claim diplomatic status when convenient. We will verify these claims through proper channels. Until then, all passengers will be detained for standard security processing." Maria watched the interaction carefully, noting the dismissive tone and body language of the Zephyrian officers. She had seen similar behavior before, though never directed at her personally, As more security personnel boarded the ship, she noticed they were treating the human crew with unusual roughness, separating them into groups without explanation. When it came Maria's turn to present her identification, she stepped forward calmly and offered her credentials to Commander Vextar. The documents clearly identified her as Federal Supreme Arbiter Maria Washington, with full legal authority and diplomatic immunity. Vextar glanced at the documents and then looked at Maria with undisguised amusement. "These documents are obviously forged," he said loudly, causing several of his officers to laugh. "A human female, especially one with your appearance, could never hold such a position in any civilized government." Maria felt a familiar surge of anger but kept her voice steady. "Commander, I assure you those credentials are genuine. You can verify them through the Federation's central database." "Silence," Vextar snapped. "We know how human society works. Females, particularly those of your genetic background, serve in menial positions. You are clearly attempting to impersonate a superior officer. This is a serious crime." The other Zephyrians found this exchange hilarious, their harsh laughter echoing through the ship's corridors. One of the younger officers commented loudly in their native language, which Maria understood thanks to her legal training. He was suggesting that she was probably a servant or cargo handler pretending to be important. Dr. Brooks stepped forward angrily. "How dare you treat her like this? Judge Washington is one of the most respected legal minds on Earth." "Judge?" Vextar's laughter became even louder. "Humans have such active imaginations. Next, you will tell me this servant commands fleets of starships." Maria realized that reasoning with them would be pointless for now. The Zephyrians had clearly formed their opinions about human hierarchy, based on limited and apparently biased information. She would need to find another way to establish her authority and protect her fellow travelers. As the security team began searching the ship more aggressively, confiscating personal items and communications equipment, Maria noticed they were treating the human crew as suspected criminals, rather than legitimate diplomatic travelers. This was not standard Federation protocol, and she began to suspect that Nexus Prime had been getting away with similar violations for some time. Captain Martinez was placed in restraints when she protested the treatment of her crew. Dr. Brooks and the other scientists were separated from their research materials and confined to a small cargo bay. Maria found herself grouped with what the Zephyrians assumed were lower-ranking personnel, despite her attempts to explain her true position. As Commander Vextar supervised the detention of the entire human delegation, Maria began planning her next moves. She had faced discrimination before in her career, but never on this scale or with such serious implications. The success of Earth's integration into the Galactic Federation might depend on how she handled the next few hours. The station's artificial gravity felt heavier than Earth, normal as the security team marched the humans through the docking tube toward Nexus Prime's detention facilities. Maria maintained her dignified composure while mentally cataloging every violation of Federation law she was witnessing. Soon, she thought, Commander Vextar would learn exactly who he was dealing with. The detention facility on Nexus Prime was designed to intimidate. The walls were made of dark metal that seemed to absorb light, and the air recycling system produced a constant low hum that made conversation difficult. Maria found herself in a holding cell with 12 other members of the Earth delegation, including Dr. Brooks and 2 junior diplomats named Nancy Collins and Robert Kim. Captain Martinez had been taken to a separate section, presumably for what the Zephyrians called Command Personnel Interrogation. Maria could hear raised voices echoing through the corridors suggesting that Lisa was not accepting her treatment quietly. The captain's protests were met with harsh laughter from the guards who seemed to find human indignation amusing. "This is insane," Nancy whispered, clutching her diplomatic credentials. "We're protected by 17 different Federation treaties. They can't just treat us like common criminals." "They can if they don't recognize our authority," Maria replied quietly, studying the detention cell's construction. The Zephyrians had built this facility to Federation standards, but they were clearly interpreting those standards very loosely when it came to human rights. Dr. Brooks paced nervously near the energy barrier that served as their cell door. "I keep thinking about what my cousin Jake told me. He said the Zephyrians have some strange ideas about human society. They think we're still organized like primitive, tribal groups with males dominating females and lighter skin meaning higher status. Maria nodded grimly. I've seen references to those misconceptions in some of the cultural exchange reports. The problem is that most of their information about humanity comes from old entertainment broadcasts and limited contact with human traders and military personnel. They've never actually studied our legal and social systems. A new group of guards approached their cell, led by a Zephyrian officer with elaborate rank insignia. This one carried himself with the arrogance of someone who had never been challenged by subordinates. He studied the humans like specimens in a laboratory, paying particular attention to Maria. I am Security Chief Kexnor, he announced. I have reviewed your alleged credentials, and I must say, the forgery work is quite impressive. Whoever created these documents has real artistic talent. Those documents are genuine, Robert Kim said firmly. Judge Washington is exactly who she claims to be. Kexnor's lip curled in what might have been amusement. Young human, your loyalty to your social superior is admirable, but we know how your species organizes itself. This female may hold some minor administrative position, but she is certainly not a judge in any meaningful sense. What exactly do you think you know about human society? Maria asked, stepping closer to the energy barrier. Her voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. We know enough, Kexnor replied. Your species is barely 3 centuries out of barbarism. Your social structure is primitive, based on physical strength and tribal affiliations. Males lead, females follow, and genetic appearance determines social rank. It is the same pattern we have observed in dozens of primitive species. Dr. Brooks laughed bitterly. You couldn't be more wrong. Human society has evolved far beyond those ancient patterns. We judge people by their abilities and character, not their appearance or gender. Impossible, another guard interjected. Every species follows the natural hierarchy. The strong rule the weak, males dominate females, and superior genetics produce superior individuals. This is the way of the universe. Maria realized they were dealing with something more dangerous than simple prejudice. The Zephyrians seemed to have built their entire worldview around concepts that humanity had abandoned centuries ago. Their society was apparently still organized around those primitive hierarchies, and they assumed all other species must follow the same patterns. Tell me, Security Chief, Maria said carefully, how many human legal experts have you actually met? None. Because there are none, Kexnor replied confidently. Humans lack the intellectual capacity for advanced jurisprudence. Your species may have mastered basic technology, but complex legal reasoning requires centuries of cultural evolution that you simply have not had. Then explain how we qualified for Federation membership, Nancy challenged. Military potential, Kexnor said dismissively. The Federation needed more soldiers for the border conflicts with the hegemony. Your species breeds quickly and fights aggressively. But do not mistake military usefulness for true civilization. Maria felt a chill as she realized the scope of the misunderstanding. The Zephyrians were not just dismissing her personal authority, they were dismissing humanity's entire contribution to galactic civilization. This was not an isolated incident of discrimination, but part of a systematic underestimation of human capabilities. Through the corridor, she could hear Captain Martinez's voice rising in anger. The captain was apparently trying to contact Earth through official diplomatic channels, but the Zephyrians were blocking all communications. They claimed it was standard security protocol, but Maria suspected they were trying to prevent verification of the human's true status. A younger Zephyrian guard approached the cell, looking somewhat uncomfortable with the proceedings. Unlike his colleagues, he seemed to have some doubts about their treatment of the humans. When Kexnor moved away to inspect other prisoners, this guard lingered near Maria's cell. Excuse me, he said quietly in accented English. I am Guard Kexley. I have been studying human culture as part of my security training, and some of your claims seem possible. Maria studied the young alien carefully. He was smaller than his colleagues, with less prominent forehead ridges and a nervous manner that suggested he was new to his position. What have you learned about human culture, Guard Kexley? I have read reports that suggest human social organization is more complex than our commanders believe, he whispered, glancing around to ensure he was not overheard. Some documents indicate that humans have achieved remarkable progress in equality and justice. Those documents are correct, Maria said gently. Human society has spent centuries learning to value all individuals regardless of their appearance or gender. It is one of our greatest achievements. Kexley looked troubled. But Commander Vextar says such claims are impossible. He says that natural law requires hierarchy based on strength and genetics. Natural law, Dr. Brooks interjected, is whatever intelligent beings choose to make it. Humans chose equality over hierarchy, cooperation over domination. The young guard's confusion was evident. Everything he had been taught about the natural order conflicted with what these humans were telling him. Maria realized that Kexley might be their key to breaking through the wall of Zephyrian preconceptions. Guard Kexley, she said carefully, would you be willing to verify our credentials through the Federation Central Database? A simple query would confirm everything we have told you. Kexley looked around nervously. I do not have authorization for such queries. Only senior officers can access Federation records. Then ask a senior officer to run the query, Nancy suggested. They refuse, Kexley admitted. They say human documents are not worth the time to verify. Maria felt her anger rising again, but she forced herself to remain calm. That is unfortunate, because when the truth comes out, as it inevitably will, your commanders will face serious consequences for violating Federation law. What do you mean? Kexley asked. I mean that detaining diplomatic personnel without proper verification is a Class 7 violation of Federation protocols, Maria explained. The penalties include removal from service, criminal charges, and possible expulsion from the Federation itself. The young guard's eyes widened. He had clearly not considered the legal implications of their actions. But surely Commander Vextar knows Federation law. Perhaps he does, Maria said quietly. Or perhaps he has grown so comfortable with his authority that he has forgotten the law applies to everyone. As if summoned by their conversation, Commander Vextar appeared at the end of the corridor, striding toward their cell with obvious irritation. Captain Martinez was being dragged behind him by 2 guards, her uniform torn and her expression furious. The human commander continues to make ridiculous claims about diplomatic immunity and legal authority. Vextar announced loudly. She insists that Earth's delegation includes high-ranking judges and legal experts. Such fantasies would be amusing if they were not so insulting to our intelligence. Maria stepped forward as Vextar approached. Commander, I strongly advise you to verify our credentials before this situation escalates further. Vextar's laughter was harsh and mocking. Still pretending to be important, little human? Your persistence would be admirable if it were not so pathetic. Hours passed in the detention facility, and Maria used the time to gather information from her fellow prisoners. What she learned disturbed her more than the immediate injustice of their situation. Dr. Brooks had been questioned extensively about human research methods, with the Zephyrian interrogators expressing disbelief that Earth's scientific community included so many female researchers. Nancy Collins revealed that during her interrogation, the guards had assumed she was Captain Martinez's personal assistant rather than a qualified diplomat. Robert Kim had perhaps the most troubling information. During his questioning, a Zephyrian official had casually mentioned that human ships had been experiencing difficulties at various Federation facilities for months. The official seemed to consider these incidents amusing examples of human arrogance being properly corrected. They're not treating this as an isolated misunderstanding, Maria realized. This is part of a pattern. Captain Martinez, who had been returned to their cell with obvious reluctance from her captors, confirmed Maria's suspicions. They kept asking me about our real command structure, she said, gingerly touching a bruise on her arm. They refused to believe that I actually command the New Horizon. They kept insisting that there must be a male officer somewhere who holds actual authority. Guard Kexley appeared at their cell again, looking even more troubled than before. He had obviously been thinking about their conversation, and something was bothering him. When his colleagues were out of earshot, he approached the energy barrier. I have been reviewing incident reports from other Federation facilities, he whispered. There have been 17 separate complaints filed by human ships in the past 6 months. All involve detention, questioning of credentials, and what humans call discriminatory treatment. 17? Nancy gasped. Why haven't we heard about this on Earth? Because, Kexley said reluctantly, the complaints were dismissed by Federation review boards. Zephyrian officials testified that humans were attempting to claim false credentials and manipulate Federation protocols. Maria felt a cold anger settling in her stomach. And the review boards accepted Zephyrian testimony without independent verification? Zephyrians are a founding Federation species, Kexley explained. Our word carries significant weight in legal proceedings. Also, humans are new members with limited political influence. Dr. Brooks pounded his fist against the wall. So they've been getting away with this for months and nobody in Federation authority cares enough to investigate. It is more complicated than that, Kexley said, glancing around nervously. The Federation operates on a system of species-based representation. Older, more established members have greater influence in legal matters. Newer species like humans must prove themselves over time before their complaints carry equal weight. Prove themselves by accepting discrimination and abuse? Captain Martinez asked bitterly. Kexley did not answer directly, but his expression suggested that was exactly what was expected. Maria realized they were dealing with a systemic problem that went far beyond Commander Vextar's personal prejudices. The Federation's power structure was designed to favor established species, creating opportunities for exactly the kind of abuse they were experiencing. Guard Kexley, Maria said carefully, do you believe the complaints filed by human ships were legitimate? The young Zephyrian struggled with the question. I'm beginning to think some of them might have been. The official reports describe behavior that seems consistent with what I have observed here. Then you understand that innocent people have been suffering while your government covers up systematic violations of Federation law. Kexley's discomfort was obvious, but challenging senior officers is not permitted in our society. Questioning the wisdom of established authority leads to chaos and disorder. Sometimes, Maria said gently, established authority is wrong. When that happens, good people have a responsibility to speak up, regardless of the personal cost. Before Kexley could respond, the detention facility's communication system crackled to life. A new voice, speaking in heavily accented English, announced the arrival of Earth's human liaison officer. Maria felt a flicker of hope, thinking that perhaps someone with proper authority had finally arrived to resolve their situation. That hope faded quickly when Peter Grant entered the detention area. The human liaison officer was a thin, nervous man who seemed overwhelmed by his position. He carried a briefcase full of documents and wore the expression of someone who expected to be dismissed or ignored. Commander Vextar, Grant said in a voice that trembled slightly, I have come to inquire about the status of the Earth delegation. Their ship was reported overdue for departure. Vextar emerged from his office with obvious annoyance. Liaison Grant, your people continue to test our patience with their fraudulent claims and disrespectful behavior. We are conducting a thorough investigation of suspected document forgery and impersonation of Federation officials. Grant's shoulders sagged visibly. I see. Is there anything I can do to expedite the process? The Earth government is concerned about their citizens' welfare. Your government should be more concerned about teaching its citizens proper respect for authority, Vextar replied coldly. These humans arrived with obviously forged credentials, claiming to hold positions that are clearly beyond their species' capabilities. Maria watched this exchange with growing frustration. Grant was making no effort to defend his fellow humans or challenge the Zephyrian assertions. Instead, he seemed to be accepting their version of events without question. Mr. Grant, she called out, I am Federal Supreme Arbiter Maria Washington. I demand that you verify my credentials through proper Federation channels immediately. Grant looked at her with surprise and something that might have been pity. Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but making exaggerated claims about your position will only make things worse. I'm here to help, but you need to be realistic about the situation. Realistic? Captain Martinez stepped forward angrily. Peter, you know who we are. You processed our diplomatic clearances yourself before we left Earth. Grant shifted uncomfortably. Lisa, I processed travel documents for a diplomatic mission. That doesn't mean I verified everyone's individual credentials or authority levels. Maria realized with horror that even Earth's own representative doubted their legitimacy. Grant had apparently been intimidated into accepting the Zephyrian assessment of human capabilities. He was more concerned with avoiding conflict than protecting human rights. Mr. Grant, she said firmly, I am ordering you as a federal supreme arbiter to contact Earth immediately and verify my identity through proper channels. Ma'am, you can't order me to do anything, Grant replied nervously. I report to the Earth Diplomatic Corps, and they've instructed me to work within Federation protocols when dealing with incidents like this. Incidents like this? Dr. Brooks demanded. How many other incidents have there been? Grant's silence was answer enough. Kexley had been right. This was a pattern of abuse that had been going on for months, and Earth's own representatives had been accepting it rather than fighting back. Commander Vextar watched this exchange with obvious satisfaction. You see, Liaison Grant, even your own people recognize these claims as fraudulent. The female is clearly delusional, probably suffering from the stress of detention. That's enough, Maria said, her voice carrying a tone of authority that made even Vextar pause momentarily. Mr. Grant, you are witnessing multiple violations of Federation law. If you fail to report these violations and seek proper verification of our credentials, you will be complicit in the systematic abuse of human rights. Grant looked around nervously, caught between his fear of the Zephyrians and the growing realization that something was seriously wrong. I will file a report with Earth when I return to my office. You will contact Earth now, Maria insisted, or you will face charges of dereliction of duty when this matter is resolved. The certainty in her voice seemed to shake Grant's confidence in the Zephyrian assessment. For the first time since arriving, he looked at Maria with something approaching respect rather than pity. Vexatar, however, was growing tired of the discussion. Liaison Grant, unless you have official business here, I suggest you leave. These prisoners will be processed according to station protocols. As Grant reluctantly prepared to leave, Maria made one last attempt to reach him. Peter, think about what you're doing. Think about the kind of precedent you're setting for how humans are treated in Federation space. Grant paused at the door, conflict evident on his face. For a moment it seemed he might find the courage to challenge the Zephyrian authority, but then his shoulders slumped again, and he left without another word. Maria spent the next several hours in deep thought, analyzing their situation from every possible angle. As a federal supreme arbiter, she had access to legal resources that the Zephyrians probably did not know about. Hidden within her judicial robes was a small device that contained her official certification codes and provided access to the Federation's central legal database. The device was designed to be undetectable to standard security scans, allowing judges to research legal precedents even in hostile environments. The challenge was activating the device without drawing attention from the guards. Maria needed several minutes of uninterrupted access to download the information she required. She also needed to be careful about how she used any evidence she gathered, because revealing her true capabilities too early might cause the Zephyrians to escalate their restrictions. Dr. Brooks noticed her concentrated expression and moved closer. You're planning something, he whispered. I'm researching, Maria replied quietly. There are legal resources available to federal arbiters that most people don't know about. If I can access the Federation database, I might be able to find evidence of similar violations across Zephyrian space. Nancy Collins looked hopeful for the first time since their detention began. Evidence that could expose this pattern of discrimination? Evidence that could bring down their entire authority structure on Nexus Prime, Maria confirmed. But I need time and privacy to work. Captain Martinez understood immediately. I can create a distraction. The guards seem to enjoy arguing with me about command authority. Be careful, Maria warned. Don't give them an excuse to escalate to violence. Lisa nodded and moved toward the energy barrier. Guard, she called loudly. I demand to speak with your commanding officer about the illegal detention of a Federation diplomatic mission. Two Zephyrian guards approached, looking annoyed by the interruption. The human commander continues to make noise, one of them commented to his colleague. Perhaps she needs to be reminded of her place. My place, Captain Martinez replied firmly, is commanding Earth's diplomatic vessel. Your place is following Federation protocols for the treatment of diplomatic personnel. So far, you failed completely at your job. The guards' anger was immediate and predictable. They began arguing with Martinez about human arrogance and the proper respect due to superior species. Other prisoners joined the debate, creating enough noise and distraction to mask Maria's activities in the back corner of the cell. Maria carefully activated her judicial device, keeping it concealed within her robes. The small screen displayed her official credentials, confirming her identity as Federal Supreme Arbiter Maria Washington, authorized to access any Federation legal database for research purposes. She quickly navigated to the incident reporting system and began searching for patterns of discrimination against human vessels. What she found was worse than she had imagined. Over the past 18 months, there had been 43 separate incidents involving human ships in Zephyrian space. The complaints ranged from minor harassment to serious violations of diplomatic immunity. In every case, Zephyrian officials had dismissed the complaints as human attempts to claim false authority or manipulate Federation protocols. More disturbing was the pattern of legal manipulation Maria discovered in the case files. Zephyrian representatives had been systematically challenging human legal standing in Federation courts, arguing that humanity's recent membership status meant their legal experts lacked proper qualifications. They had successfully blocked several human-sponsored legal initiatives and prevented human lawyers from representing other species in important cases. The database revealed that similar patterns had been used against other newer Federation members. The Zephyrians had developed a sophisticated system for maintaining their legal dominance by undermining the credibility of potential rivals. They used their status as founding members to dismiss challenges from newer species, effectively creating a two-tier justice system within the Federation. Maria downloaded case files, legal precedents, and communication records that documented the systematic nature of these violations. The evidence was overwhelming, but she needed to present it carefully. Revealing her capabilities too early might prompt the Zephyrians to confiscate her device or claim the evidence was fraudulent. As she worked, Guard Kexley appeared near their cell again. The young Zephyrian had been making regular visits, obviously struggling with his growing doubts about their treatment of the humans. Maria noticed he was carrying a data tablet and seemed to be conducting his own research. "Guard Kexley," she called softly, timing her approach to coincide with a particularly loud exchange between Captain Martinez and the other guards. Kexley moved closer, checking to ensure his colleagues were distracted. "I have been reviewing more incident reports," he whispered. "The pattern you mentioned appears to be accurate. There have been many complaints from human vessels. How many complaints have been independently investigated?" Maria asked. "None," Kexley admitted reluctantly. "All investigations have been conducted by Zephyrian security forces, who have consistently found no evidence of wrongdoing." "And you find this pattern credible?" Kexley's discomfort was obvious. "I find it concerning. The consistency of the findings suggests either remarkable discipline among Zephyrian forces or systematic bias in the investigation process." Maria decided to take a calculated risk. "Guard Kexley, I want to show you something, but you must promise to keep it confidential until I decide how to proceed." The young guard looked around nervously, then nodded. Maria carefully revealed her judicial device, keeping it angled so only Kexley could see the screen. His eyes widened as he recognized the official Federation authentication codes and saw her true credentials displayed. "This is impossible," he breathed. "These codes are restricted to the highest levels of Federation authority. These codes belong to me," Maria said quietly. "I am exactly who I claim to be, and I have been documenting every violation of Federation law that has occurred since our arrival." Kexley stared at the device in shock. "You are truly a Federal Supreme Arbiter?" "I am truly a Federal Supreme Arbiter, and you are truly in serious trouble unless this situation is resolved immediately." The young guard's face went pale. "Commander Vextar will never believe this. He will claim the device is fraudulent, just like your other credentials." "Then we have a problem," Maria said, "because the evidence I have gathered will eventually reach Federation authorities whether Commander Vextar believes it or not. The question is whether he wants to be seen as someone who made an honest mistake or someone who knowingly violated Federation law." Kexley's hands shook as he processed the implications. "What?" "What will happen to us?" "That depends on how quickly you act to correct this situation," Maria replied. "Right now you still have the opportunity to be seen as someone who helped expose corruption, rather than someone who participated in it." Before Kexley could respond, Commander Vextar's voice boomed across the detention facility. "All guards report for duty rotation." We have received word that the human vessel's repairs are complete, and these prisoners will be transferred to long-term holding pending investigation. Maria felt a chill of urgency. Long-term holding would mean transfer to a more secure facility, possibly on the planet below. Once that happened, her ability to communicate with Federation authorities would be severely limited. "Guard Kexley," she said urgently, "if you have any integrity at all, you will act now to prevent a catastrophic mistake that will destroy careers and potentially destabilize Federation relations." Kexley looked torn between duty and conscience. Around them, the other guards were beginning to organize for the prisoner transfer. Captain Martinez's distraction had served its purpose, but time was running out. "I need proof," Kexley whispered desperately, something that Commander Vexistar cannot dismiss or ignore. Maria made her decision. She activated her device's emergency beacon, a feature that would broadcast her credentials directly to Federation Central Command. The signal would take several hours to reach Federation headquarters, but once it did, the response would be immediate and overwhelming. "You want proof?" she said, showing Kexley the beacon activation screen. "In 6 hours, every Federation authority from here to the Galactic Core will know exactly what has happened on Nexus Prime. Commander Vextar's career will be over. This facility will be under investigation, and everyone involved will face criminal charges." Kexley's eyes went wide with terror. "You have contacted Federation Command?" "I have contacted Federation Command," Maria confirmed. "Your only chance now is to help resolve this situation before they arrive." The next few hours passed in tense silence as Maria waited for her emergency beacon to reach Federation Command. Guard Kexley had disappeared after their conversation, and she could only hope he was gathering the courage to act on what he had learned. The other guards continued their preparations for transferring the human prisoners to long-term holding, unaware that their entire operation was about to come under intense scrutiny from the highest levels of Federation authority. Dr. Brooks noticed Maria's calm confidence and moved closer. "Whatever you did back there, it worked. You look like someone who just played a winning move in a very important game." "The game isn't over yet," Maria replied quietly, "but the rules are about to change dramatically." Captain Martinez had been watching the guard rotations carefully. "They're planning to move us in about an hour. If help is coming, it needs to arrive soon." Before Maria could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the detention facility. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red, and automated announcements in multiple languages declared a priority alpha security alert. The guards stopped their preparations and began running toward command stations, their earlier confidence replaced by obvious panic. Commander Vexitar's voice echoed through the facility's communication system, no longer carrying its earlier arrogance. "All personnel report to emergency stations. We have incoming Federation vessels on approach vectors. Prepare for immediate inspection and review." Nancy Collins laughed with relief. "Federation vessels, plural?" "When a Federal Supreme Arbiter activates an emergency beacon," Maria explained, "the response tends to be comprehensive. Through the detention facility's small windows, they could see ships approaching Nexus Prime. The vessels were sleek and purposeful, bearing the distinctive markings of Federation Command Authority. Maria counted at least 5 ships, including what appeared to be a heavy cruiser that probably carried a full legal investigation team. Guard Kexley appeared at their cell, breathing heavily and looking terrified. "Judge Washington," he said urgently, "I have told Commander Vextar about your true identity. He refuses to believe me, but the arriving ships are demanding immediate access to all detained personnel." "What did you tell your commander?" Maria asked. "I told him that detaining a Federal Supreme Arbiter was a crime that could result in military intervention and the dissolution of Nexus Prime's operating authority. I told him that his only chance was to release you immediately and cooperate fully with the investigation." "And his response?" Kexley looked sick. "He said you had somehow corrupted me with human lies, and he ordered me confined to quarters for the duration of the crisis." Maria felt a surge of respect for the young guard. "You risked your career to tell him the truth. That took real courage." "It may have been foolish courage," Kexley replied bitterly. "Commander Vexitar is preparing to claim that humans infiltrated our security systems and created false emergency signals to support their fraudulent credentials." Dr. Brooks shook his head in amazement. He's going to claim this is all an elaborate human deception, even with Federation command ships arriving? Pride makes people do stupid things, Captain Martinez observed. Sometimes they double down on bad decisions, rather than admit they were wrong. The facility shook slightly as the Federation ships docked with Nexus Prime. Maria could hear the distinctive hum of heavy transport, systems being activated, suggesting that significant numbers of personnel were boarding the station. Commander Vextar's voice returned to the communication system, but now it carried a note of desperation. Attention, Federation forces. Nexus Prime Security is conducting a legitimate investigation of suspected document forgery and credential fraud by human nationals. We request that you respect our territorial authority and allow us to complete our procedures. The response came immediately in a crisp, professional voice that carried absolute authority. Nexus Prime Control, this is Federation Command Vessel Meridian. We are responding to a priority alpha beacon from Federal Supreme Arbiter, Maria Washington. You will immediately release all detained personnel and prepare for full security review. Maria smiled for the first time since their detention began. That would be Admiral Helen Carter. She commands the Federation's Internal Affairs Division. You know her personally? Nancy asked. Helen and I worked together on the legal framework for human integration into the Federation. She's been a strong advocate for equal treatment of all member species. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors as Federation security forces entered the detention facility. These were not the relatively casual guards that Nexus Prime employed, but professional military personnel trained specifically for investigating violations of Federation law. Their equipment was more advanced, their bearing more disciplined, and their authority unquestionable. Commander Vextar appeared in the corridor, flanked by his remaining loyal guards. He was trying to maintain his composure, but the strain was obvious. Federation forces, I protest this invasion of Zephyrian territorial sovereignty. These humans have engaged in fraudulent impersonation of Federation officials. A tall woman in Federation command uniform stepped forward. Admiral Carter was an impressive figure, carrying herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to command at the highest levels. Her eyes swept the detention area, taking in every detail of the humans' treatment. Commander Vextar, she said calmly, I am Admiral Helen Carter, Federation Internal Affairs Division. I am here in response to an emergency beacon activated by Federal Supreme Arbiter, Maria Washington. Where is Judge Washington? Vexitar's face had gone pale, but he continued his desperate bluff. Admiral, you have been deceived by sophisticated human manipulation. There is no Federal Supreme Arbiter among these prisoners. The individual claiming that identity is an imposter using fraudulent credentials. Admiral Carter's expression did not change, but something cold entered her voice. Commander, are you telling me that you have detained and questioned a Federal Supreme Arbiter for over 12 hours without verifying her credentials through proper channels? I am telling you that no such person exists among these prisoners, Vexitar insisted. Maria stepped forward within her cell, her dignity intact despite hours of detention. Hello, Helen. Thank you for responding so quickly to my beacon. Admiral Carter's face lit up with recognition and barely controlled anger. Maria, are you injured? Have you been mistreated? I am unharmed, though the same cannot be said for Federation law. The violations here have been systematic and extensive. Admiral Carter turned back to Commander Vextar, her voice now carrying the full authority of Federation command. Commander, you are under arrest for violations of Articles 12, 15, and 23 of the Federation Security Code. Your facility is now under Federation control pending investigation. Vexitar's world was collapsing around him, but he made one last desperate attempt to save face. Admiral, these humans have somehow compromised your recognition systems. That female cannot possibly be a Federal Supreme Arbiter. That female, Admiral Carter said with icy precision, presided over the legal case that established your species' current trading rights within Federation space. I have worked with Judge Washington for over 3 years, and I would recognize her voice in the middle of a supernova. The energy barriers around the human cells deactivated as Federation technicians took control of the detention systems. Maria stepped out of her cell with the calm dignity of someone who had never doubted that justice would eventually prevail. Guard Kexley approached Admiral Carter nervously. Admiral, I tried to warn Commander Vextar about the judge's true identity. I have been documenting incidents that suggest systematic discrimination against human vessels. Admiral Carter studied the young guard carefully. What is your name and rank? Guard Kexley, Junior Security Officer. I have served on Nexus Prime for 8 months. Guard Kexley, you will report to my investigation team immediately. Your cooperation will be noted in the official record. As Federation personnel began securing the detention facility and gathering evidence, Maria finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had happened. The systematic discrimination against humans had been exposed, but the implications went far beyond Nexus Prime. Helen, she said to Admiral Carter, this incident is part of a larger pattern. The Zephyrians have been using their status as founding members to manipulate Federation legal processes and suppress newer species. Admiral Carter nodded grimly. We suspected as much. Your beacon triggered a comprehensive review of Zephyrian activities across multiple sectors. What we've found in the past 6 hours has been deeply disturbing. Commander Vextar, now in restraints, made one final attempt to justify his actions. You will see, he called out as Federation guards led him away. Humans are not ready for true authority. They lack the wisdom and discipline required for galactic leadership. Maria looked at him with something that might have been pity. Commander, humans learned centuries ago that wisdom has nothing to do with the color of someone's skin or the shape of their body. Apparently, that is a lesson your species has yet to master. The formal legal proceedings began within hours of Admiral Carter's arrival. The main conference room of Nexus Prime had been converted into a temporary courtroom, with Federation legal protocols governing every aspect of the investigation. Maria found herself in the unique position of being both a victim of the violations and the presiding judicial authority for the case. Admiral Carter had brought a full investigation team, including legal experts from 6 different Federation species. The diversity of the team was intentional, ensuring that no single species could claim bias in the proceedings. However, as the evidence was presented, it became clear that humanity's legal traditions would play a central role in establishing new precedents for Federation justice. The scope of these violations is unprecedented, announced Prosecutor Linda Hayes, a human legal expert who had arrived with the investigation team. We have documented 43 separate incidents of discrimination, illegal detention, and systematic denial of legal rights to human personnel. Judge Washington reviewed the evidence from her position at the judicial bench. The irony was not lost on anyone present that the very person whose authority had been denied was now presiding over the case that would determine the consequences. Her calm professionalism throughout the proceedings demonstrated exactly the kind of judicial temperament that Commander Vextar had claimed humans could not possess. Dr. Brooks testified about the interrogation methods used by Zephyrian security forces. They dismissed our scientific credentials based purely on gender and appearance, he explained. When I mentioned that our research team included several female scientists, they laughed and suggested that human females were incapable of understanding complex scientific concepts. Captain Martinez's testimony was equally damning. They refused to accept that I commanded the New Horizon. They kept insisting that there must be a male officer somewhere who held real authority. When I showed them our command structure documentation, they claimed it was obviously falsified because no civilized species would place females in leadership positions. The Zephyrian defense team, led by Senior Advocate Texmore, attempted to justify their actions by arguing that their personnel had acted according to established cultural understanding of human social organization. Our security forces based their assessments on information provided by previous human contacts, Texmore claimed. The inconsistencies in human self-representation suggested deliberate deception. Maria allowed the defense to present their case fully, demonstrating the kind of fair judicial process that had become humanity's hallmark. However, when it came time for her response, her expertise in interspecies law became devastatingly apparent. Senior Advocate Texmore, she said calmly, are you familiar with Article 7 of the Federation Cultural Assessment Protocols? I am, Texmore replied cautiously. Please recite Article 7 for the court. Texmore's discomfort was obvious. Article 7 states that member species are required to verify cultural assumptions through official diplomatic channels rather than relying on informal contact reports. And did Nexus Prime security forces attempt to verify their assumptions about human social organization through official channels? They relied on established precedent. Established precedent based on what documentation? Maria pressed. The question hung in the air as Texmore struggled to provide an answer. The truth was that Zephyrian assumptions about human hierarchy were based on entertainment broadcasts, casual conversations with traders, and their own cultural biases rather than any official sources. Guard Kexley's testimony proved crucial in establishing the systematic nature of the discrimination. The young Zephyrian had documented numerous incidents where human personnel had been treated dismissively, their credentials questioned, and their authority denied based purely on appearance and gender. I began to realize that our treatment of humans was inconsistent with Federation equality principles, Kexley testified. When I tried to discuss these concerns with my superiors, I was told that humans needed to be taught proper respect for established authority. And who determined what constituted proper respect? Prosecutor Hayes asked. Senior officers who had never studied human culture or legal systems, Kexley admitted. They based their policies on assumptions about human primitive nature. As the proceedings continued, something remarkable began to emerge. The Federation legal experts from other species started recognizing the sophistication of human jurisprudence. Earth's legal traditions, which had evolved through centuries of dealing with diversity and civil rights, offered solutions to problems that other species had not yet solved. Ambassador Helen Carter, testifying as both a character witness and expert on interspecies relations, explained how human legal philosophy had already influenced Federation policies. Judge Washington's work on the Equal Treatment Accords has become the foundation for how we address discrimination between member species, she said. Her legal reasoning has been adopted by courts throughout Federation space. The Zephyrian defense team found themselves increasingly outmatched as human legal experts demonstrated their mastery of Federation law. Maria's questioning revealed gaps in Zephyrian legal understanding that had allowed systematic violations to continue unchecked. Senior Advocate Texmore, Maria continued her cross-examination. How many human legal experts has your species consulted in developing policies for interaction with human personnel? None, Texmore was forced to admit. How many human cultural specialists have provided input on your assessment protocols? None. How many human representatives were included in the review process for the 43 complaints filed against Zephyrian facilities? None. The pattern was clear and damning. The Zephyrians had created policies affecting humans without consulting any human experts, then used those flawed policies to justify dismissing human complaints about discrimination. Dr. Brooks provided expert testimony on human scientific achievements, demonstrating that Earth's research community had already made significant contributions to Federation technology and knowledge. His presentation on quantum communication networks and biological research shattered Zephyrian assumptions about human intellectual capabilities. The research teams they dismissed as impossible have already published 17 papers in the Federation Scientific Journal, he explained. 3 of those papers have been cited as breakthrough research by the Galactic Science Council. Captain Martinez's testimony about human military organization revealed another area where Zephyrian assumptions had proven completely wrong. Earth's military has been integrated by gender and ethnicity for over 2 centuries, she explained. Our command structure is based on competence and training, not appearance or biological characteristics. As the evidence mounted, even the Zephyrian observers in the courtroom began to look uncomfortable. The systematic nature of the discrimination was becoming undeniable, and the sophistication of human legal reasoning was making their defense increasingly untenable. Maria's final presentation to the court demonstrated why she had earned
her position as a federal supreme arbiter.
Her analysis of Federation law was comprehensive and devastating, revealing how Zephyrian policies had violated dozens of fundamental principles that formed the foundation of interspecies cooperation. The Federation was founded on the principle that all species possess unique strengths that contribute to galactic civilization, she concluded. By systematically dismissing human contributions based on prejudice rather than evidence, the defendants have not only violated Federation law but undermined the very principles that make our alliance possible. The court recessed to deliberate, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had demonstrated that their greatest strength was not military might or advanced technology, but their sophisticated understanding of justice, equality, and the complex legal frameworks needed to make diverse societies function effectively. The court reconvened after 3 hours of deliberation, though the outcome had been evident long before the formal proceedings concluded. Judge Maria Washington took her position at the judicial bench, surrounded by legal experts from across the Federation who had witnessed something unprecedented. A complete transformation in how human legal expertise was perceived throughout galactic civilization. The court has reached its decision, Maria announced, her voice carrying the full authority of Federation law. In the matter of systematic discrimination against human personnel by Zephyrian security forces, we find the defendants guilty on all charges. The courtroom was silent as she continued. However, this case represents more than simple violations of Federation protocol. The evidence presented here reveals fundamental flaws in how newer member species are integrated into Federation legal and social structures. Commander Vextar, who had remained defiant throughout most of the proceedings, now sat with his head down, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistakes. His career was over, but more importantly, his actions had exposed weaknesses in Federation governance that demanded immediate attention. Therefore, Maria continued, this court establishes new legal precedent under what will be known as the Washington Doctrine. All member species are hereby required to conduct formal cultural and legal assessments before developing policies that affect other species. No longer will assumptions and prejudices be accepted as the basis for interspecies relations. Admiral Carter smiled with satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of comprehensive legal reasoning that had made Maria one of the most respected arbiters in Federation space. She was not just addressing the immediate violations, but creating framework to prevent similar problems in the future. The Washington Doctrine establishes 3 fundamental principles, Maria explained to the assembled court. First, all Federation personnel must receive mandatory training in interspecies equality and cultural diversity. Second, any policies affecting a member species must include input from qualified representatives of that species. Third, all complaints of discrimination must be investigated by mixed species review boards to prevent bias. Guard Kexley, who had been watching the proceedings with obvious relief, was called forward as Maria continued her ruling. In recognition of his courage in exposing systematic violations and his assistance in this investigation, Guard Kexley is hereby promoted to Director of Interspecies Relations for Nexus Prime, with full authority to implement the new protocols established by this court. The young Zephyrian's surprise was evident. Your Honor, I am not qualified for such a position. I have no experience in diplomatic relations. You have the most important qualification, Maria replied. You were willing to challenge injustice when you encountered it, regardless of personal cost. That moral courage is exactly what we need in positions of authority. The restructuring of Nexus Prime's administration was comprehensive. Commander Vextar was relieved of command and faced criminal charges that would likely result in imprisonment and permanent barring from Federation service. 3 other senior officers who had participated in the systematic discrimination were also removed from their positions. Peter Grant, the ineffective human liaison officer, was replaced with Lieutenant Amy Johnson, a former military lawyer who had impressed the court with her detailed knowledge of Federation protocols and her willingness to advocate aggressively for human rights. Lieutenant Johnson, Maria addressed the new liaison. Your primary responsibility will be ensuring that human personnel throughout this sector receive fair treatment under Federation law. You have my personal authorization to escalate any violations directly to Federation Command. The impact of the Washington Doctrine extended far beyond Nexus Prime. Within hours of the ruling, Federation Command issued orders requiring all member species to review their policies regarding human personnel. Similar investigations were launched at facilities throughout Zephyrian space, revealing additional violations that had gone unchallenged for months. Dr. Brooks was asked to address the court regarding the broader implications for scientific cooperation. The discrimination we experienced was not just personally offensive, he explained. It was preventing valuable scientific collaboration that could benefit all Federation species. Human research techniques and perspectives offer unique approaches to problems that other species have struggled to solve. Captain Martinez spoke about the military implications. Earth's fleet operates on principles of merit-based leadership and integrated command structures. These principles have made our forces highly effective in joint operations with other Federation species. Dismissing our organizational methods based on prejudice weakens overall Federation military capability. The Zephyrian delegation, led by a new commanding officer who had arrived to replace Vextar, formally apologized for the systematic violations. The Zephyrian government acknowledges that our policies were based on flawed assumptions and cultural bias, announced Commander Lextar, Vextar's replacement. We commit to full implementation of the Washington Doctrine and comprehensive retraining of all personnel. As the formal proceedings concluded, Maria found herself surrounded by legal experts from other species who wanted to understand how human jurisprudence had evolved to address complex issues of equality and justice. The Federation's legal community was beginning to recognize that Earth's experience with diversity made human legal expertise particularly valuable for interspecies relations. Judge Washington, said senior jurist Kelvar of the Andorian Legal Council, your analysis of systematic discrimination provides framework that we can apply to similar problems throughout Federation space. Would Earth be willing to share its legal expertise with other member species? Earth would be honored to contribute to Federation legal development, Maria replied. Our experience with civil rights and equality may offer solutions to challenges that other species have not yet addressed. The significance of this moment was not lost on anyone present. Humanity had entered the Federation as junior members, expected to learn from more established species. Instead, they were demonstrating that their legal and social evolution had advanced beyond what most galactic civilizations had achieved. Ambassador Carter approached Maria as the courtroom began to empty. Maria, Federation Command wants you to address the full assembly next month. This case has implications that go far beyond discrimination against humans. The assembly. Maria was genuinely surprised. No human has ever addressed the full Federation assembly. No human has ever exposed systematic flaws in Federation governance and provided comprehensive solutions, Carter replied. Your legal reasoning in this case has already influenced policy discussions at the highest levels. As they prepared to leave Nexus Prime, Guard Kexley, now Director Kexley, approached the human delegation. Judge Washington, I want you to know that this experience has changed my understanding of justice and equality. I will work to ensure that Nexus Prime becomes a model for interspecies cooperation. Director Kexley, Maria replied. You had the courage to recognize injustice and act to correct it. That makes you an ally in the work of building a truly equal Federation. The New Horizon departed Nexus Prime 12 hours later, carrying news that would transform human standing throughout Federation space. What had begun as an emergency repair stop had become a landmark legal case that established humanity as a leading voice in galactic jurisprudence. Dr. Brooks summed up the feelings of the entire delegation as they watched Nexus Prime disappear behind them. We came here as diplomats and scientists. We're leaving as legal pioneers who just changed the course of galactic civilization. 6 months after the Nexus Prime incident, Judge Maria Washington stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Federation, the first human ever granted the honor of addressing the full assembly. The vast chamber contained delegates from over 200 species, each representing civilizations that had contributed to the galaxy's greatest political achievement. Today, humanity would take its place among them not as junior members learning from their elders, but as teachers offering wisdom earned through centuries of struggle with diversity and justice. The chamber fell silent as Maria approached the central podium, her judicial robes flowing behind her. The same dignity that had sustained her through discrimination and detention now commanded the attention of the galaxy's most powerful leaders. The irony was profound. The woman whom Zephyrian guards had dismissed as a mere servant was about to reshape the legal foundation of interstellar civilization. Honored delegates, Maria began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. 6 months ago, I was detained and humiliated by security forces who judged my worth based on my appearance rather than my achievements. Today I stand before you not seeking sympathy for that treatment, but offering the wisdom that such experiences have taught my species. The human delegation, seated in the front section reserved for member species, watched with pride as their representative addressed the galaxy's leadership. Captain Martinez, Dr. Brooks, and the others who had shared her detention now witnessed the culmination of humanity's remarkable rise in galactic politics. The incident at Nexus Prime was not unique, Maria continued. Investigation revealed 43 similar violations across Zephyrian space, and subsequent inquiries found comparable patterns affecting other newer Federation members. What we discovered was not simple prejudice, but systematic flaws in how our Federation integrates diverse civilizations. Ambassador Carter, now serving as Earth's primary representative to the Federation Council, had watched Maria's preparation for this address with admiration. The legal framework that Maria would present had already begun transforming interspecies relations across Federation space. But today's speech would establish the principles that would guide galactic civilization for generations. My species learned through painful experience that diversity is not a challenge to be managed, but a strength to be embraced, Maria explained. We discovered that wisdom has no correlation with appearance, that capability transcends biology, and that justice requires the courage to challenge established assumptions. In the Zephyrian section, the new delegation led by Ambassador Cortell listened with respect rather than the dismissive arrogance that had characterized their predecessors. The Washington Doctrine had forced a complete restructuring of Zephyrian society, leading to the emergence of more progressive leadership that recognized the value of interspecies cooperation. Director Kexley, who had traveled from Nexus Prime to witness this historic address, sat in the observer section. His transformation from junior guard to respected administrator had become a symbol of how individuals could grow when exposed to higher principles of justice and equality. The Washington Doctrine has established new standards for interspecies relations, Maria continued, but laws alone cannot create understanding. True cooperation requires that we see past surface differences to recognize the unique contributions that each species brings to our common endeavor. The assembly chamber contained beings of every conceivable form, crystalline entities from gas giant moons, aquatic species in environmental suits, energy-based life forms existing in specialized containment fields. Yet Maria's words reached all of them, transcending the vast differences in biology and culture that had once seemed insurmountable. Humanity's greatest discovery was not faster-than-light travel or quantum communication, Maria said, building toward her central theme. Our greatest discovery was that a civilization's strength lies not in uniformity, but in its ability to integrate diverse perspectives into unified purpose. Lieutenant Amy Johnson, now Earth's chief legal representative for the outer sectors, had compiled reports showing dramatic improvements in human treatment throughout Federation space. The systematic discrimination that had once plagued human vessels was disappearing as the Washington Doctrine took effect. Since implementing the new protocols, Maria reported to the Assembly, complaints of discrimination have decreased by 78%, while interspecies cooperation in scientific research has increased by over 200%. When we treat all beings with dignity and respect, everyone benefits. Dr. Brooks had been asked to provide supporting testimony about the practical benefits of the new approach. His research team, which had been dismissed as impossible by Zephyrian authorities, had since published breakthrough studies in collaboration with scientists from 12 different species. The legal principles established by Judge Washington have created opportunities for collaboration that were previously impossible, Brooks explained to the Assembly. When we stopped making assumptions about capability based on appearance, we discovered that every species offers unique insights that advance our collective knowledge. The speech reached its climax as Maria addressed the fundamental challenge facing any diverse civilization. The test of a truly advanced society is not its technology or military power, but its willingness to extend dignity and opportunity to all beings regardless of their origin, appearance, or newcomer status. The response from the Assembly was immediate and overwhelming. Delegates from species that had rarely agreed on anything found themselves united in support of the principles Maria had articulated. The standing ovation that followed her conclusion lasted for several minutes, with beings of every description expressing approval in their species-specific manner. Following the address, Maria found herself surrounded by representatives from dozens of species, seeking Earth's assistance with their own diversity and justice challenges. The hegemony border states requested human legal advisors to help resolve ethnic conflicts that had persisted for centuries. The Outer Rim colonies asked for human experts to design fair governance systems for their multi-species settlements. Judge Washington, said Chancellor Vexlan of the Rigelian Confederacy, "Our species has struggled with caste-based discrimination for millennia. Would Earth be willing to share its experience in overcoming such divisions?" "Earth would be honored to assist," Maria replied. "Our history teaches us that no species is too advanced to learn new approaches to justice and equality." The transformation in humanity's galactic standing was remarkable. Within a year of the Nexus Prime incident, human legal experts were serving on courts throughout Federation space. Earth's constitutional convention framework was being adapted by dozens of species seeking to modernize their governmental systems. The Federation Academy established a new Department of Interspecies Justice, with Maria serving as its first director. Students from across the galaxy came to study human approaches to civil rights, constitutional law, and conflict resolution. Captain Martinez, promoted to admiral and given command of the new Federation Diversity Initiative, oversaw the implementation of integrated command structures throughout the galactic fleet. Her leadership style, once dismissed as impossible by Zephyrian authorities, became the standard for Federation military operations. As Maria returned to Earth to a hero's welcome, she reflected on how far humanity had traveled since first joining the Federation. They had entered as supplicants seeking acceptance from more advanced civilizations. They were now recognized as teachers offering wisdom that could transform galactic society. The final irony was not lost on her as she reviewed applications from dozens of species requesting human judges, legal advisors, and constitutional experts, the same qualities that had made her seem unfit for authority in Zephyrian eyes. Her humanity, her experience with discrimination, her commitment to equality, were now recognized as exactly what the galaxy needed. Standing in her chambers overlooking the lights of New Geneva, Maria smiled as she opened the latest communication from the Federation Council. 3 more species had formally requested assistance in establishing human-style civil rights frameworks. The woman who had been laughed at and dismissed by alien police had become the most respected legal mind in galactic civilization. Humanity had found its place among the stars not through conquest or superior technology, but through the hard-won wisdom of a species that had learned to see strength in diversity and power in justice. The laughter that had once greeted Maria's claims of authority had been replaced by the respectful attention of a galaxy eager to learn from humanity's greatest achievement, the creation of a truly equal society.